In a world where status demands attention, one leader chooses humility. When discrimination meets quiet strength, an ordinary flight becomes an extraordinary lesson in respect and sovereignty. This is the story of a moment that transformed perceptions and reminded the world that dignity isn't determined by appearance. Morning light filtered through the windows of Brussels International Airport as travelers rushed to their destinations, unaware of the distinguished figure sitting quietly among them. Ibrahim Traoré waited at gate 23, dressed in casual clothes, a simple hoodie, comfortable pants, and unbranded shoes. No security detail, no assistance, no official protocol. Nothing to indicate that this man led a nation. As the leader of his West African country, Traoré believed in experiencing life as his citizens did. After concluding important regional cooperation talks in Europe, he was returning home the same way he'd arrived, without ceremony or special treatment. When boarding began for Continental Airways, Flight 442, he joined the line with other passengers, smiled at the gate agent, and made his way to his assigned business class seat by the window. His presence went completely unnoticed, precisely as he intended. Meanwhile, near the customer service desk, Marcel Beaufort, CEO of Resource Extraction Global, was creating a scene. His executive travel coordinator had just informed him that his preferred seating arrangement wasn't available on his flight to West Africa. "Do you have any idea who I am?" Beaufort demanded, his voice echoing across the terminal. "My company has invested millions in infrastructure projects across that region. This is completely unacceptable." The airline representative maintained her professional composure, despite his growing hostility. "I understand your frustration, sir, but the business class cabin is fully booked. We cannot remove other passengers who have confirmed reservations. Then find someone who wouldn't mind being compensated to move," Beaufort insisted, checking his luxury watch impatiently. Surely there must be someone. After several tense minutes of argument, the airline supervisor decided to send a senior flight attendant to assess the situation on board and determine if any accommodation could be made. Aboard the aircraft, senior flight attendant Elise Moreau received the message about the VIP situation. With over 15 years of experience serving premium cabins, she prided herself on solving difficult customer issues with discretion and efficiency. She entered the business class cabin, scanning each passenger carefully, seeking the perfect candidate for relocation. Her eyes settled on Ibrahim Traoré, sitting quietly reviewing documents on his tablet. To Elise, he seemed the obvious choice. No luxury accessories, no imperious demands, no busy entourage. Just a casually dressed African man who, in her biased assessment, might appreciate compensation for moving to premium economy. With a practiced smile, she approached him. "Excuse me, sir. May I see your boarding pass, please?" Ibrahim looked up calmly and handed her his documentation without question. Elise verified the information. His seat assignment was legitimate, but her mind was already set. "Sir, we have a situation requiring some seating adjustments. Would you be willing to move to our premium economy section? We would offer generous compensation for your inconvenience." Ibrahim regarded her thoughtfully. "May I ask why I specifically am being approached about this?" "It's simply an operational matter," Elise replied smoothly. "We need to accommodate an important business traveler." "And I am not important?" Ibrahim asked quietly. "All our passengers are valued," Elise said automatically, her smile never wavering. "But in this particular case, we have a VIP with significant business interests in the region who requires accommodation." Ibrahim closed his tablet and looked directly at her. "I must decline. I've purchased this seat, and I intend to remain in it." Elise wasn't accustomed to being refused, especially not by someone she had predetermined would comply. "I really must insist, sir," she said, her tone cooling slightly. "The airline would be happy to provide vouchers for future travel as well." The answer remains no, Ibrahim replied, his voice calm but firm. Perhaps you should inform your VIP that the flight is fully booked, as is often the case with commercial travel. Other passengers began to notice the exchange. A businessman lowered his newspaper. A woman across the aisle paused her typing, listening discreetly. Frustrated, Elise stepped away to consult with another crew member. Minutes later, she bypassed Ibrahim entirely and approached another African passenger several rows back. Sir, we need to make some seating adjustments. Would you be willing to move to premium economy with compensation? She asked, using the same rehearsed tone. Ibrahim observed this pattern continue, as Elise systematically approached only passengers of African descent, ignoring the Europeans in the cabin. The discrimination was unmistakable. He rose from his seat with deliberate calm. "Excuse me," he said, his voice carrying just enough to be clearly heard. "I notice you're only approaching certain passengers. Is there a reason you're selecting only travelers who look like me?" Elise turned, startled by the confrontation. "Sir, please return to your seat. I'm handling a routine operational matter. There seems to be nothing routine about targeting passengers based on their appearance." Ibrahim noted, "These travelers have purchased their seats just like everyone else." Eventually, Beaufort boarded the aircraft, his displeasure evident as he was escorted to a business class seat that had been arranged by displacing a young African student who had reluctantly accepted the airline's compensation offer. Throughout the flight, the disparity in service was striking. While Beaufort received constant attention, complimentary drinks, and personal service from Elise, the remaining African passengers, including Ibrahim, were largely ignored or served by junior crew members. When a young flight attendant nervously offered Ibrahim a beverage, he requested water with a kind smile that immediately put her at ease. "First international rotation?" he asked conversationally. "Yes, sir," she admitted. "Still learning the ropes. We all start somewhere," Ibrahim replied warmly. Several rows behind, a doctor from Ibrahim's country recognized her leader but remained discreetly silent, watching the situation unfold with increasing indignation. As the flight progressed, Beaufort grew increasingly loud, discussing his business operations with no concern for who might overhear. "These developing nations need our expertise," he announced to Elise as she refilled his champagne glass. "Without proper guidance from established economies, they simply can't advance." Ibrahim heard every word, but maintained his composed demeanor as the aircraft began its descent toward his homeland below. The plane touched down smoothly on the sun-baked runway. As passengers gathered their belongings and prepared to disembark, unusual activity became visible through the windows. A line of official vehicles positioned near the arrival gate. Military personnel standing at attention in formal uniform. Curious passengers peered out at the scene. "What's happening?" one tourist asked nervously. "Is there some kind of security situation?" "No," replied another traveler. "Looks like a formal welcome for someone important." Beaufort straightened his tie, assuming the reception must somehow be related to his arrival. "Probably arranged by my local partners," he mentioned to Elise with obvious self-satisfaction. "Our project is quite significant to the national economy." Elise nodded appreciatively, already calculating how attaching herself to this VIP might benefit her career. The aircraft door opened, and an officer in formal military attire boarded the plane. He walked purposefully through the cabin, scanning faces until he reached Ibrahim's seat. He stopped, came to perfect attention, and offered a crisp salute. "Welcome home, Mr. President. Your cabinet awaits your arrival." A stunned silence fell over the entire cabin. Elise froze mid-action, her professional smile disappearing as realization dawned. Beaufort's expression transformed from smug satisfaction to alarmed disbelief. Ibrahim acknowledged the officer with a simple nod. "Thank you, Colonel. I'll join them momentarily." As he prepared to exit, additional security personnel boarded the aircraft. One approached Elise and Beaufort directly, Miss Moreau and Mr. Beaufort, you are requested to remain on board for additional processing. There must be some mistake, Elise stammered, her composure crumbling. No mistake, the officer replied. We have documented evidence of discriminatory behavior and disrespect toward our head of state. Beaufort attempted to assert himself. This is outrageous. Don't you know who I am? Yes, sir. That's precisely the issue at hand. On the tarmac, Ibrahim was greeted by government officials and citizens who had gathered at the airport perimeter. News cameras captured the moment as he shook hands with ministers and acknowledged the cheering crowd. Meanwhile, Elise and Beaufort were escorted from the aircraft separately, their expressions of shock and confusion captured by dozens of passenger smartphones in what was rapidly becoming an international incident. By nightfall, the story had spread worldwide. Social media exploded with video clips and first-hand accounts. Hashtags like #RespectNoteAppearance and #Ibrahim's dignity trended globally. Continental Airways issued a hasty statement apologizing for the unfortunate incident and promising a comprehensive review of their customer service policies and staff training. Foreign ministries scrambled to arrange consular support for their detained citizens, while Ibrahim's government announced that formal charges were being considered for discriminatory conduct and disrespect of a head of state on national soil. During questioning, Elise repeatedly claimed she was following unstated company practices. I had no idea who he was, she insisted tearfully. That's precisely the problem, replied the investigator. You judged his worth based solely on appearance. That he happened to be our president merely highlighted a prejudice that many of our citizens face regularly. Beaufort attempted to leverage his corporate connections to secure his release, but found his usual channels of influence ineffective. His company's stock price began falling, as investors worried about the implications for their operations in the region. In a brief televised address from the presidential palace, Ibrahim spoke to the nation. What occurred today reflects not just my personal experience, but the experience of many who are judged by appearance rather than character. In our nation, we will build a society where respect is not determined by clothing, title, or wealth, but extended to all as a fundamental right. The incident catalyzed important conversations globally about implicit bias, dignity, and the lingering attitudes of colonial thinking in international relations. Continental Airways implemented comprehensive anti-discrimination training for all staff and revised their policies regarding passenger accommodations. Other airlines quickly followed suit, recognizing the potential reputational damage of similar incidents. Beaufort's company faced increased scrutiny in their international operations, with new requirements for community engagement and equitable partnership that fundamentally changed their approach to business in Africa. As for Ibrahim Traore, he continued his practice of traveling simply when possible, though security considerations sometimes made this impractical. His leadership approach, grounded in the principles of respect and dignity, became a model studied by emerging democracies worldwide. The incident, initially a simple moment of bias on an ordinary flight, ultimately became a catalyst for change, a reminder that true leadership isn't displayed through privilege or appearance, but through the dignity with which we treat every human being.